Let's get an update on what is happening in Gaza. Israel, of course, has vowed to destroy Hamas, which controls the territory and is responsible for the attack on the 7th of October in Israel, which left over 1,000 Israeli civilians dead. Nearly 200 people have been taken hostage. We know, of course, that Israel has started bombarding Gaza. We understand at least 2,700 people have died in recent days. The country's borders, all bar one, are controlled by Israel, and the only border with Gaza that could provide safe passage out of the area that is now, of course, facing this massive military ground offensive is in Egypt. And I'm joined now by Egypt's ambassador to South Africa, Ahmed el Fadly. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. So I wonder if you could just talk to us about what you know at the moment is happening at Gaza's southern border, which of course borders Sinai province, which is part of Egypt. We understand that on the Gazan side, many people have built up there, desperately hoping they can cross. Is that border actually open at the moment?
Thank you, Sally, for hosting me. Let me at the beginning just outline that because you alluded to the number of victims that we have on either side. We have condemned, of course, the killing of civilians on both sides. But we need to understand that what we're facing right now is something of a completely different magnitude than before, in the following: that we have an occupying power, this is Israel, that has always been resisted by the Palestinian people in different forms. Some forms of the resistance has been violent, of course. This is another cycle of violence. But we have always witnessed an excessive use of force by Israel when addressing this, in complete ignorance to its obligations under international humanitarian law. We have been reminding Israel as an occupying power that it's obliged to operate within the parameters and boundaries of international law. Now, the carpet bombing that we have seen in Gaza, as well as the use of what has been now circulated as the use of white phosphorus and other things, clearly are not within the boundaries of international humanitarian law and are in contravention to that. In addition, of course, what you've alluded to right now, which is the Israel's attempts to displace Palestinians outside their territory. Now, this is what we call transfer, and this has been categorically rejected by Egypt, not Egypt alone, but also by the Arab ministers of foreign affairs, a resolution that has been issued by the Arab League last Wednesday. This is in their meeting at the Arab League last Wednesday. Now, this is important. Why? Because when you have the transfer of Palestinians or external displacement outside their territories, the problem is that, again, we increase the number of Palestinians who have been denied the right of return. We've seen this repeatedly. Back in 1948, we've seen it in 1967. In fact, a lot of the Palestinians who are in Gaza originally came from other territories in Palestine. So this is important to be cognizant of this factor. We do not want to repeat the mistakes of the past. Now, regarding the situation at the border itself, regrettably, once the violence, there was an outbreak of violence, the Egyptian side had attempted to be ready for humanitarian aid to enter the Palestinian territories. But regrettably, the Israeli forces have bombed the Palestinian side of the border, of the Rafah border crossing, 4 times until now, rendering that part inoperable.
In what, sorry to jump in, just for clarity, in what space of time? So you're saying they've been bombing in the southern part of Gaza. Is that just in the last few days as well?
Well, now we've been witnessing violence only for the past 10 days or so. So, I mean, that has been repeatedly done a number of times. And at the moment, we have not officially closed the border today. It has always been open, but it is inoperable at the Palestinian side. What we have been doing at the moment is work on a number of fronts in respect to humanitarian aid, because our priority right now is to get humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. We have lined up trucks holding, I mean, humanitarian aid. By humanitarian aid, we talk about food, we talk about blankets, we talk about medicine, medical supplies, and so forth. And we're waiting at the border until the agreement is reached between the competent authorities to be able to enter safely this humanitarian aid.
I see. So in other words, is that for Israel to say, because what we're hearing from the Israeli side, and we understand this is, everything is so contested, but what we're reading is that Israel says that there are corridors, they're giving people time to move. Are you saying currently it's not clear if it's actually safe to open the border between Egypt, where a lot of humanitarian aid is building up, and bring humanitarian aid in?
Of course, there's no agreement yet. The corridors that they are talking about, in the end, they talked about corridors for people to move from north southwards without indicating where south. And while they were moving, we have seen reports that even they have bombed those areas, and at least 70 people were killed and hundreds of wounded as well. So they're giving presumed, civilian corridors that are not even respected as such. So this is important to take into consideration. Over and above, a number of hospitals in Gaza have refused to evacuate. How can they evacuate their citizens? I mean, the patients
or they simply can't,
so because
people can't be moved. Yeah. No, I hear you, and it's such a very difficult situation. And I found the context you gave us just at the beginning of the interview, where, you know, if you open the border, you say currently it's inoperable, but if you make a plan to allow people who want to cross over into Egypt, you're not sure if they'll ever be allowed back into Gaza. Are you concerned that Israel may just take Gaza back and say, you know what, Hamas was not trusted, it killed so many of our civilians, we never want anyone here except us again? Is that your concern, that you will ultimately just end up housing Gaza citizens on your territory?
Well, they never left Gaza in the first place, because even when they did a unilateral withdrawal from Gaza, they literally sieged the Gaza.
Yeah, sure. But what I'm saying is the citizens were still there. Yeah.
Yes, the citizens are there, but even again, we have seen it time and again from Israel that those Palestinians who are displaced outside the occupied territories are never allowed the right of return again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can't repeat the same thing more than several times expecting to have a different outcome.
Yeah. I want to ask you a quick question.
Let me assure you, if I can just assure you one thing also. I don't know if you know that or not, but Egypt at the moment hosts about 9 million whom we call guests, but they're refugees. Sudan, from Libya, from Syria, Iraq, Yemen, so forth. So
I think that's such an important point. I think it's such an important you make that Egypt hosts about 9 million refugees already, because the narrative that you're not prepared to help people is not fair. But I do want to ask you about what you think can be done in the coming days to at least let people out who desperately need to get out. I mean, I'm thinking of, you know, we were chatting about in the office, women who are about to give birth, tiny children who are ill and stuck at the border, foreigners who have a legitimate claim to leave Gaza. Are you thinking of special provisions for those situations at least?
Look, I think what we need to focus on is to get the aid in rather than get the people out. Because if you look at the WFP, for example, the World Food Program, we're talking about, I've seen some reports talking about 4 to 5 days left of food supplies in the occupied territories. This means that you are on the verge of famine if you don't get a humanitarian aid in. And to get humanitarian aid in, it means that you need to have safe corridors and safe havens and so forth. And once you do that, then hospitals are supposed to be not a target at all. And those, if you're talking about people who are about to give birth to somebody or whatever, then they can go to those hospitals. But the issue to assume that the easy way out is to just push the people into the border, towards the border, not for you, I mean, for Israel to assume that the easy way out is to push the citizens or civilians in towards the border, hoping that out of fear, they would just jump to the other side. That is not a solution at all. So right now, if you're talking about action, we need collective action from the international community. We've seen a lot of demonstrations worldwide calling for that. By the way, including demonstrations by Jews that I've seen in Europe and in the US. I mean, there has been an infamous demonstration there in the US saying not in our names. So it's not an issue of anything to the effect of attacking Jews or anything of the sort.
No, I'm with you. It strikes me, and we do have to close, it strikes me that the voices we cannot afford to ignore now are those in the middle, the moderate people who want a just solution, who want everyone to feel safe and everyone to have a home. And it does seem rather worrying with this increased violence now that this two-state solution, which was meant to happen, is now perhaps even further apart. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. Much appreciated. That was the Egyptian ambassador to South Africa, Ahmed el Fadly.